Mark, it is so good to be with you in your beautiful house, surrounded by all these memories of your son. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So one thing we want to talk about is the fundraiser that you have coming up to honor Jared. It is a pub crawl. Of all things to think of, why did you think of that one?
He turns 21 this Friday, the 25th. I remember turning 21, 100 decades ago. Turning 21 is a huge milestone for any young person, and I know Jared was very much looking forward to it. He was always a bit ticked off that he could serve his country and not have go into Applebee's and have a beer, and I agree with him. I think that's something that I'll probably be tackling down the road. But yeah, he's due to be 21 this Friday, and obviously he's not here to celebrate with us. So I felt it fitting to kind of on a whim just come up with this pub crawl idea, and I thought the patriotism of the people of St. Charles County has been so tremendous, and they've embraced us, and we have one giant family now. And I know that I feel anyway, it would probably make them feel well to participate in something like this too. So needless to say, I reached out to a handful of bars and restaurants, and I had a heck of a close ratio. It was 100%. Everybody's like, absolutely, we're in. And I'm like, this is awesome. And then I had some other people call me and say, I want to volunteer to help bring in more bars and restaurants too. And I said, okay. So it starts snowballing. We go from 2 to 10 to 20 in no time. And then I guess those bar owners knew people that lived in Ohio and in California, wherever, and they would call them up and say, hey, we're doing this. And then they wanted to be part of it. And so I'm like, well, why not just go national with this thing? So before you knew it, we are where we are now. I think we're up to 170 bars and restaurants, and we're currently in 25 states. So my goal was to try to give Jared the biggest birthday party that Missouri's ever seen. I guess our new goal is going to be to see if we can give him the biggest birthday party the country's ever seen. So we're excited. This is a win-win situation for our nonprofit. That's where the money is going that we're raising, but also for these venues, these businesses that got hammered with COVID.
Right.
Having to close their doors and having a hard time finding people to work for them. It's just been a struggle for them for so long. And hey, now they can go in and ask to buy Jared a drink, and maybe while they're there have a pizza or a burger or have a couple more cocktails, and then their friends show up, and before you know it, these guys are making a little extra money too, and we're raising money the way we want it to help our nonprofit.
It sounds like the two of you talked about him turning 21.
Yeah.
What was that conversation like?
Well, Jared never drank before he was 21. He just felt like he'd be part of the club, the men's club, to be able to be 21 and legally drink. And he was never a troublemaker. I mean, he, as far as getting into trouble prior to being 21 with drinking or any of that, he always had a good group of friends he hung around with, and they all kept each other on the straight and narrow, so that was great. I knew he'd be the type that would be responsible about it. I, as his father, was just excited to see a second son turn 21. My oldest is 28, Cameron, and my oldest son's getting married. My first child is getting married in April, and Jared's going to miss that.
Are you surprised or uplifted by the response that you have gotten every step of the way here, Mark, every step of the way?
It's all been a surprise. I knew, when we lose a police officer, a firefighter, or another soldier or Marine, the community here, they're good people, and they rally. So I'm surprised, though, in that how big it's been. That the homecoming procession.
Remarkable.
Oh my God. Then the funeral itself to JB, not quite as big, but a lot longer. So probably the same number of people, just stretched out a little thinner. I love how I love watching the look on people's faces when they're able to do something and it makes them feel good. That means a lot to our family, and we have tried to say yes to everything that we can, because I know it means a lot to other people too, and that's how our whole family has been. It's just we like to give, and that's how Jared was, and we as a family would like to help people, and that's how Jared was as well. So when we first launched this pub crawl idea and it took off the way that it did, I was shocked it took off that fast, ecstatic about it. I mean, I'm thrilled. Honestly, I think this will probably be our single biggest fundraising event of every year. And our goal now is to, no holds barred, it's going to be double the participation level from one year to the next to the next. So that within 4 or 5 years, hopefully we can raise $1 million in a weekend, and that's going to go a long way to helping veterans and their families.
I'm glad you said that, because what will the foundation be used to do other than to honor your precious son?
So what we're doing, by advice of my attorney, he says keep your mission statement broad.
Okay.
So we did exactly that. Our mission is to help veterans and their families, and it's just that giant umbrella, because there's so many things that the government isn't doing enough of for these ladies and gentlemen that have served our country, and if the government's not going to do it, we need to do it as people, as citizens. And I never served. I was off to college, off to the professional world. That's been my life. So I can't stand in the ranks of these guys, but I can respect what they stood for and who they are. And if I can help in changing their lives for the better, even if just a little bit, then I feel like I'm doing my part. But our first angle is housing. My wife is an insurance agent, deals with houses, home insurance and all that. I am a real estate photographer by trade, so I'm dealing with housing. I've been in the mortgage industry for 20 years and dealt with housing. Our main client base is realtors, dealing with housing. So we looked at some organizations that are out there. So instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, who could we partner with initially? That's when we met Adam McBride with VCP, which is Veterans Community Project. They're based in Kansas City. They successfully built a 50-unit tiny home village.
Love it.
For homeless veterans, where they go in and bring in these homeless veterans. First thing they do is get them into the VA system completely if they're not already. They get them the food stamps they're entitled to. More importantly than any of it, they figure out what made you homeless in the first place.
Yeah.
What's the reason? Sometimes it's alcohol, sometimes it's drugs, sometimes it's PTSD. A lot of times they found it's simply they got a medical bill that was high and unanticipated, and they feel obligated to make sure that they pay their debts, right? For most of us, we know mortgage goes first,
right,
then your car, your major things have to get taken care of before anything else. And I think that they have a hard time struggling with, I got 3 major things or 4 major things, and they let them all kind of lapse. Well, then it snowballs, and next thing you know, you're losing your home over a medical bill that you didn't want to have go bad, So one would think that somebody's living in a cardboard box or out of their car, given up, or forced to give up because they've lost everything. It would take a long time for them to get back on their feet. And after a conversation with Adam, he told me that overall, on average, they are getting these guys out of the temporary transitional housing in around 10 months average time, which is insane. I mean, they are getting them in the VA, they're getting the food stamps, they're getting to figure out the problem of what caused them to be there. They're helping them with their interview skills, they're giving them their counseling they need, they're helping them get suits to find jobs, they're helping them find the jobs.
In less than a year.
In less than a year, they are up and on their feet and functioning again in society, and they're moving on and renting an apartment. And as of the last time I spoke to him, I believe, and I apologize if I'm incorrect, he said none of them have come back. Meaning they've all turned that leaf and have successfully made that transition back into regular life again. I'm sure there's struggles like we all have,
Right.
but the fact that they're not homeless again and back at square one is a wonderful thing.
Is everything. Is a tiny village coming to?
Yes, there is. It's on North Grand. They'll be doing another 50-unit village there. The houses cost about $50,000 a piece,
Okay.
because it's not that they're glorious mansions. These are tiny homes.
Right.
I think they're under 350 square feet-ish size. I mean, they're not huge, but they have thought of everything from the color schemes to the fabric material, because they want these guys, they don't want it to be triggering PTSD. They want them to have as easy a time as possible in their new temporary home. But the neat thing about their program is that when these guys walk in, everything in that unit is up 100% brand new. Brand new sheets, brand new pillows, brand new couch, brand new table, brand new chair, microwave, stove, fridge, everything. It is all theirs to take with them when they are done living in it, if they would like it. And so that also helps them to treat it with a little bit more respect as well, because it is going to be theirs to take with them. The silverware, the towels, all of it. So when one graduates, if you will, from transitional housing and gets their own place, they can take all of that with them. It's like a starter kit. Then they go back in, they repaint, brand new pillows, brand new bed, everything's all new again, and they bring in another one. Pardon me. So again, I'm not here to reinvent the wheel. So instead, we cut them a check for $100,000 to pay for 2 houses. One is the house that Jared built, and one is the house that Freedom 13 built. So
There's so much I want to know, and one of those things is no one would begrudge you the desire to ball up in a corner and not leave the house. We would all understand that. But that is not what you have done at all. Why did you decide, I'm not gonna, this is a beautiful basement, but I'm not gonna stay here in the lower level. I'm going to get out, and I am going to make my presence known and honor my son in the way that you have.
I'll give you the comical version first.
Okay.
If you knew my son, and pardon my French, but my son would say, "Dad, it's time to grow up here." He would not be happy if he knew I was sitting here distraught, depressed over what happened. You know, of course you're going to go through that initially.
Yeah.
But to hold on to that as your focus in life now, he'd be pissed at me for doing that. My wife and I are active people. We have a very, very deep faith in God. Jared, at the age of 12, decided he wanted to be baptized. We're Catholic, and he wanted to be baptized, First Communion, Confirmation. We were very supportive of that, and we feel that we will see Jared again. There's no doubt. So although missing him for however many more years I have left,
Yeah.
it's going to suck
Yeah.
horribly, but I know I'll see him again, and there's a lot to get done, and I know that my son stood for a lot, and there's a lot of people that need help, and that's what his mission in life is to help people. And now I've decided I need to pick up his torch and carry that on, and so that's why we're doing what we're doing. We have learned a lot of things about our military and about our government through all of this. You know, we all watch the news from time to time and see the things that are going on, but till you have to be thrown into something firsthand like this, you don't really see the backside of
Yeah.
everything going on, and it's rather disturbing, to say the least. So we see the veterans that have fought before him, have come home, and how some of them turn out, and our government turns their back on them. You know, they don't do enough. And like I said earlier, that's where we come in as people. We need to step
Right.
up. If our government's not going to do it, we owe it to them. We all do. I mean, we have freedoms that we all take for granted, and I'm guilty of that as well. Wake up every day, and things happen, and it's like, how are we afforded this ability to do that? You know, you're forced to think that way now, and I get very disturbed now more than ever before when I see what they call a typical Karen, if you will, complaining and bitching and moaning about things that are not going their way that day, whether it's a They forgot to put French fries in a bag, and this is
Right.
the end of the world. And you know, I look at them and I just feel really sorry for them, because this country is wonderful, and it's wonderful for a reason, and it's primarily because of the veterans that have served this country and have died. You go to any cemetery that's a memorial cemetery for veterans, and you can see as far as your eye can see how many people. Yeah, the flags on Art Hill, and when that was in town, it's mind-blowing, and that's just a small fraction, you know, of all of them. You got Arlington, you got JB, you've got other national cemeteries, and there's just countless people who have literally laid down their lives for our country, and we
So get over your coffee being cold.
Yeah. There's a lot of work to be done.
Right.
I mean, I'm trying to run 2 businesses too, but this is a third, but this probably means more than any of them. I mean, I still have to focus on the other, because I got bills to pay too, but.
And you're a husband and a father.
Yeah. And I need to be better at that too. I need to focus more of my energies on my family too. But this is one of those things you have to grab it hard and fast to get the roots firmly rooted, I believe. And then you can kind of slow it down a little bit and more strategize and make things happen over time, more reasonable. But I just wish, after meeting all these people that have come forward, that they had the opportunity to know him, because I am not doing him justice by trying to explain who he was. If you had met him once, you'd understand the importance of who Jared Schmitz was.
What do you miss most?
Oh my gosh, his goofy laugh. Honestly, he can make anybody on their worst day laugh. He was so silly. And the sound effects he would make. His best friend that's in the Corps came and visited us afterwards, and I didn't know this about him, but he could mimic Jared to a T. It was almost haunting, like scary. It made your heart warm, but he could make the weird noises that Jared would make, and it was like, you know, but that was so nice to hear again, you know, and I just wish that I had more of an opportunity to talk to him prior to what happened. Yeah. But they were on post for 96 straight hours, and by the time he got off the post, he was exhausted and reached out to me via text. So the time I spoke to him before that was almost 4 days, you know, and that weighs on me hard.
Yeah. I know that you want to know why, what really happened. And I don't necessarily want us to talk about what you know, but why, what does it do for you to have gone through this thus far, to try to figure out what really happened?
I've tried to explain this to people before, in that if Jared was in the mountains and there was a firefight and he was the unlucky one to catch a bullet, in some weird way that'd be easier to accept, because it's kind of cut and dry. You know, he was on the unlucky end of the gun, you know, and or if it was a roadside bomb, which happens so many times.
Right.
Not that it's ever easy, but at least this is what happened, end of story, and move on. You know, this one's a lot different than that, because it never should have happened. It didn't need to happen. And the people that made the decisions that were made that led up to this are literally washing their hands. It's not me, it's him. And then that guy's not me, it's him. You know, and it's just a circle of nonsense, and nobody has taken any accountability or responsibility about it whatsoever. I'm 51 years old. I remember Schwarzkopf, Colonel Powell, Oliver North. You know, I remember key players back in the day, Reagan years, etc. And I can't help but to think that if those generals were still in their positions and were asked to do some of the things they were ordered to do, they would have washed their hands of it and resigned and walked away, rather than partake and what so many people now are calling a complete and total disaster.
So what does accountability look like? Since
When-
everybody's pointing their fingers.
When the DOD came to the House to deliver their final investigation, the two gentlemen that were at our home were not part of the investigation. They were merely the messengers. One was a JAG attorney and the other a colonel, I believe, based out of the Pentagon. So right from the get-go, I told them, I understand you're the messenger, so if I get emotional or speak with a tone, let's say, you're my sounding board, that's it. I'm not personally attacking you with this information. Well, yeah, they respected that. But they gave us information that did not add up to what we were already told from the Marines that were physically there.
Because you've spoken to Marines
Yes.
that were physically there.
Prior to them being told they can't talk.
So they give you a story that doesn't add up with what you have been eyewitness accounts you've been given.
Correct. They had no knowledge prior to this that I'm aware of that I had already been talking with Afghans that were there and now are here or in other parts of the country. The Afghans are still tied into the Afghan social community via electronic devices and whatnot. And I've befriended several of them that I have met through the people that have helped get them situated since they've gotten out. Many of them they're vetted because they know the Marines.
Right.
They were translators 4 years ago. I asked them pretty much from the beginning. I said, do you have photos? Do you have videos of what was happening over there? And he said, yeah, I've got some and I can get more from other people. I said, okay. He says, Mark, when we were over there, all Afghans have phones. And everybody had their phone out all the time. I mean, sometimes they're making calls, trying to get a hold of the State Department to get out of there. Some were just doing videos, I mean, constantly, right? There's only one known video of the explosion. Almost mathematically impossible for that to be the case.
Given
How many people were
Right.
there, how many people had their cell phones out all the time. So I let them roll with it, and they showed us that video, and that's the only video I've seen of the explosion, because you go on Google or any of these other search engines, which are run by big tech, you can't find a single video anywhere. Which, again, very suspicious. But he had told me, prior to me telling him I had talked to the Afghans, they were telling us about gunfire. And I said, he's like, I know some of your families have been told there was gunfire. There was no gunfire. What do you mean there was no gunfire? There was warning shots, but there was no gunfire. And I said, okay. And I just played dumb. I'm like, so what's a warning shot? It's like a pop, pop, and then a pause, and a pop, pop, and a pause, just to keep crowd control. He's like, yeah, exactly like that. And so I pulled up a video that one of the Afghans had sent me, which was shot days earlier, where they had discharged their weapons. I don't know if they were blanks or bean bags or what they were, but they were clearly firing up and over people just as a crowd control measure. And I said, oh, you mean like this? And it was my tablet, not my phone. I flipped it around, and it was a big tablet so they could easily see it. And they're like, yeah, exactly like that. Like, oh, thank you for, backing what we're telling you. And I was like, okay. And I pulled another one up, like this too? And he's like, yeah, that's exactly like that. I said, okay. Well, could you kindly explain this one to me? If you'd like me to pull it up, I can. And I'll tell you, the look on their face when they heard this was priceless, because they had no idea where the heck this came from, but and I have several like this from different angles. The pink and white smoke is visible on the footage that they have at the airport where the explosion happened. It's visible from a distance from where this was at, further away. It was visible in another angle, which I could show you if you needed to, from the other side. The JAG attorney starts scribbling real fast. The colonel just kind of has this blank look on his face, and then he says, well, where's that from? I said, I've been talking to Afghans and I said, do you want to see photos? And I had all the extremely graphic images of guys that were right there, right after it had happened. And he says, well, we don't know where that's from, or if that's even there. Or I'm like, okay, the trees are the same. The smoke is exactly the same. It's all coming out the same. I said, I was being sincere. I said, I'm happy to send every piece I have to the Pentagon so you guys can finish your supposedly finished investigation. And he says, we'll let you know if we need that. And ultimately they did. They asked for it. Sent it all in. I've heard nothing.
You have not heard a thing?
Nothing.
Does the word cover up, is that too strong a word?
I don't understand what there is to cover up. I don't understand why these kids aren't being allowed to talk. Because if things happen the way that they're saying were happened, then what do these kids have to talk about that would be conflicting with anything they had to say? And the problem is, the Marines that we've talked to, there was one that emptied his entire magazine. There's another one who knows he shot 4 times, another one that shot twice, another one that shot 3 times. There's a report in the investigation that clearly states that the snipers in the tower right there were taking gunfire because this was after the explosion and bullets were coming through the window and hitting the back wall of the tower. That doesn't happen from a ball bearing that had already come and passed, right? The list goes on. I received a copy of his autopsy. I asked for a copy of his autopsy with his photos as well. I got that too. I have not looked at those photos, and I hope to God for the rest of my life I never have to. But I got them for the reason I needed them, in case something like this were to happen. The autopsy explains that Jared had 5 metal fragments pulled from his body. He had approximately 12 entry points, but only 5 pieces were recovered. From the report of the investigation on the autopsy, everything happened to his rear left. He took shrapnel, or he took whatever, to the head, to the face, through the cheek, shattered his teeth. Some were found in his esophagus, some were found in his mouth. Each buttock had an entry point. His back rear shoulder near the spinal cord had an entry point. I don't recall exactly what parts of the body the metal fragments were removed from, but it clearly states in this autopsy they were unidentifiable because they were, twisted and mangled or whatever. Granted, they had these kids over there in Dover for the autopsy for quite a long time. Were studies done on this metal? Because I told them, I said, I'd like those metal fragments to be returned to me so I could pay to have them independently studied.
Did you get them?
We don't have them. They were disposed of. Why?
Yeah.
Why on earth would something like that be disposed of? Wouldn't you think that if you're going to do your own, maybe even classified investigation into the origins of that metal, you'd want to know where that came from so you can pinpoint who's really responsible? It's because they don't care. Keep in mind that in the autopsy it states these are unidentifiable and everything came from the rear left, okay? Fast forward to the investigation, he now magically has entry points from the front. So we're going back to John F. Kennedy and the magic bullet. Now apparently the thing can go through you, turn around and come back. And it, the minute I read it, I was insanely ticked off because in the verbiage in the investigation, it clearly states ball bearings 4 times. Ball bearing was removed from face. Ball bearing was removed from back shoulder. Not metal fragment, not this millimeter to that millimeter measurement metal fragment like was in the autopsy. Now everything, clear as day, is, for sure, is a ball bearing, of which they don't have anymore. So even if they sent me something via FedEx today, I couldn't believe it is what they're saying it is, you know? And they're getting the trajectory incorrect. They're saying the blast comes from the front. So I don't know which freaking report is accurate, the medical examiners or their investigation. I would tend to lean towards the medical examiner who's hands-on the body, you know. FBI was supposedly there. Absolutely no help. They've given me 0 information. The stories don't add up at all. And this is the same that I'm getting from these other parents too. And they're saying that you can't tell the difference between a ball bearing entry wound versus a 5.56 entry wound. Well, if you all remember when we snuck away in the middle of the night from Bagram and left all those guns and Humvees and helicopters and everything else there, of course nobody wants pie in the face that those guns could have potentially been used against us. I'm not saying that's what happened. I don't know what happened. What I'm sick of is being lied to.
You're not getting the story.
Yeah. And so you're asking me the why. For obvious reasons, I want to know why my son was killed. At this point, murdered, in my mind. Now I want to know the how. I think I'm entitled to that. And not some made-up Hollywood nonsense.
And it sounds like you want to know from the government, why are you not telling me the whole truth?
Well, so I don't pay much attention to CNN, but I happened to see a story they did, and the writing's on the wall, what I think they're trying to do, which is give the government their next out. It starts off supportive of what the Marines have shared with us, but then it quickly flips. And while we're in this investigation sit-down briefing, they're telling us that these young Marines don't remember anything correctly because of what they're referring to as blast effects, concussive, effects of the explosion. Okay. CNN, well, backing up, the investigation, they did numerous interviews. Not a single Afghan was interviewed by our top military. Not a single one. But yet CNN somehow is able to interview mysterious Afghans that were there. And now these Afghans are saying, because apparently Afghans are immune to blast effects, because they could remember everything perfectly clear. They're trying to say the Marines got up on those concrete blocks and were shooting down on unarmed Afghans. That's what you call bullshit. That's a spit in the face to these young Marines who sat there for countless hours on duty, on post, countless days, countless weeks, helping these people out. And out into what? Out of nowhere, just turn around and start opening fire and killing these people? It's a supportive narrative to what the government is trying to pitch through their investigation to us family members, that there was no gunfire. These kids don't remember everything correctly, leading up to the fact that the kids don't remember pulling their guns out and blowing people away, that they just got done trying to protect and rescue to get out of the country.
So do you have 2 goals in life now: to honor your son and to get the truth?
I told the DOD while they were at the house, I said, I'm a big enough man to know that we're human and we make mistakes. And if somebody in the government had the kahunas to approach me as a Gold Star dad and say, look, I effed up. I made a bad call and I can't bring your kid back, but it's my fault. I would shake that person's hand for having the courage to stand up and take responsibility. They haven't even afforded us that opportunity, because not one of them is taking responsibility for anything. It's all, he did it.
Right.
I didn't, he did it. It's, you lose your kid, it's a horrible thing. You get spit in the face by the government he worked for, which is another spit in the face. And then you're left with nothing but BS lies and stories. And then some spin like CNN's trying to do right now is a further spit in the face. It blows my mind. I get it. This is war. And this wasn't even a combat operation, but in war, there's tragedy. There's collateral damage. There's death. We're going to lose some, and that's horrible and it sucks, but that's the facts of life. This didn't have to happen like that. It did not have to happen. Oh my God, I can't even talk anymore. That did not have to happen. That gate was supposed to have already been closed. Who made the call to keep that gate open? Can't get any answers. Nobody's giving up a name. And I don't know, again, I wasn't military, so maybe there's this code that you just don't rat or you don't whatever, you don't whistleblow on somebody, but this is disgusting at this point. I used to think and hold the utmost respect for military and those that served and the high ups that got to where they were. But now, when I was a younger little guy and I was watching Schwarzkopf command his troops, and he was an idol to me, And now I look at what's in there now, and it's speaking engagements after they retire, it's pensions, it's money, it's always coming down to that, it seems like. And my son's gone. And he's never coming home.
Do you still talk to him?
Every day. Every day. I have an artist out of California that took that photo. He was doing this. Mm-hmm. He painted it on an oil painting, framed it real nice. It's actually a better picture of Jared than the photo is itself, because he cleaned him up, but Jared had a very stone cold face on him, and he turned just the slightest little grin. And he's still doing this, and I turn around and I say good morning and good night to him every single day. Whenever I'm having a rough time, I turn around and...
Yes. What are you going to drink for him at the pub crawl? Are you going to toast?
What am I not going to drink for him? My family and I are going down to the Blues game on his birthday. Mm-hmm. We have season tickets, and the Blues were nice enough to give us 6 additional since we have 2 and couldn't bring the kids. So our whole family's going down. That's where Jared would want to be. So that's Friday night. Saturday night, we're having a private party here with roughly 100 family and friends. We purchased like 60 of those candle-lit lanterns, the real big ones.
Yeah.
We're going to do a huge lantern release once it gets dark. And if I'm sober enough, I'll put my drone up and videotape them.
I hope you're not.
No, I don't want to get
You
drunk. But
just feel good.
yeah.
Just feel good.
I've tried to get a hold of as many of his friends as I could that we've hung out with in the past. And
where's this Purple Heart?
keep it in storage in a safe. That's a beautiful medal too, by the way. I so much of this stuff of his that I can't replace, I don't like keeping out.
Right.
You know, not that I suspect anybody coming over and taking off with something, but you just never know. Save it for special occasions. So they were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. I guess you probably heard that. Mm-hmm. I don't know what happens after being awarded that, if we're supposed to go back out to D.C. or what. Somebody said we're supposed to get a replica of that, which I understand they keep the original at the Smithsonian or something. But
Wow. When did you get that notice?
well, we were notified that they were in the running. Literally, I think the end of September. That was put through the House,
Okay.
I guess, and passed the House, passed the Senate, and then all that was left was for Biden to sign off on it, of which he did. But that puts these kids in a league that's almost untouchable. I mean, you've got Pope John Paul and Mother Teresa in there.
Wow.
You've got Ronald Reagan and George Washington in there, and it's a very distinguished, very small list of people. I think there's only 176 maybe people that have ever been given that. It's a huge honor, but then with everything else that's been going on, you almost take a step back and go, "Is this a hush thing?" You know, like shut them up by giving them something, and that
They don't know
me.
you.
It ticks me off because I want to relish in the fact that my son earned this.
Right.
But then in the back of my mind, it's still, is this
Is
their
it
way
real?
of,
Yeah.
is this their way of just trying to keep us quiet? And I got news for them. If you need to take it back, because we're not going to be quiet.
Right.
I mean,
You, as a family that believes in God, does forgiveness ever? At what point do you?
I think I just covered that with, if somebody would have come up to me and said, "Look, I'm responsible," I would have shook his hand, knowing that it took that much courage to do that, and that, in a sense, would have been, you're human, I'm human, I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, and I could forgive that. What I can't forgive is silence. What I can't forgive is the lies. I cannot forgive people that just keep passing the buck, and nobody stands up and takes responsibility. That there's nothing to forgive because there's nobody to forgive. Because nobody's taking the responsibility, It just.
Well, people want to honor Jared as well, and they want to support you and your family, and they can do that at the pub crawl. What do people need to do?
So you can go to our website, which is thefreedom13.org. If you scroll down to the events part and click read more, that'll take you to a link where you can purchase the first annual Marine Jared Schmitz pub crawl attire. You can get hoodies, t-shirts, all that money goes into the nonprofit, of course. It's got PDFs that are downloadable if you own a bar or restaurant or any other business for that matter. I should mention we've had quite a few companies that aren't in those industries that want to do something. USA Mortgage, for example, is doing a $5,000 match. So if you're going to donate through them first, because they're going to match dollar for dollar up to $5,000.
Fantastic.
Which is fantastic, absolutely. But all that still goes into the same pot, essentially. There's also the live Google map. That's probably the most important piece, because that's where you can find a list of all of the participating bars and restaurants all over the country. And your traditional pub crawl starts in one place, ends in another.
Right.
And this isn't that. This is a pick a place, pick 5 places and hit them all. Show your love and support to the local businesses that are stepping up and helping us out with this. There's QR codes that are on all the flyers, so if somebody wants to donate, they can scan that with their phone and donate right into the site. They can give money to the bar for their effort to buy Jared a drink, and then the bars to keep that money separate and then donate it at the end of their campaign. Some are doing it, they're already doing it now. Some are going to be doing it just Friday, Saturday. Some are doing it just Friday, and there's been a couple of them that said they're going to do this all year round. So anybody goes in and says they want to buy Jared a drink anytime this year, they can do that. Our goal again is to make this an annual thing, since it has such a wonderful, it's been welcomed so well. We want to do this every year and then double our numbers every single year. So if we get 180 bars this year, we're going to go for 360 next year, and just keep growing it and growing it and growing it. Jared will always be our focus, but
Right.
the big picture focus is always the veterans and their families. So I feel like I have the direction of Jared, and then that's helping his brothers and sisters out there that served before him. So you can accomplish great things in big numbers, and
Yeah.
a little bit from a lot of people goes a long way.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to meet you in person. Happy birthday, happy heavenly birthday to Jared. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.